all you need to know, the Bloomberg Quint podcast that prepares you for the day's business. Good morning and thanks for tuning in. You're listening to the daily morning update from Bloomberg Quint and I'm Alex Matthew. Today's the 27th of June. Crude oil prices, which had briefly approached the $60 per barrel mark, once again rose above $65 after a huge drop in US inventories bolstered the outlook for demand. The US Energy Information Administration said domestic stockpiles fell by 12.8 million barrels last week. That's the biggest decline in American supplies since September of 2016, and it was accompanied by record exports of crude and refined products and petrol demand that remained near an all-time high. From the Indian context, that's important because of the quantity of crude that we import. A higher price dramatically impacts our trade balances. There's news in the primary markets here in India. HDFC Bank has picked Bank of America and Morgan Stanley to manage an initial public offering of its non-bank finance unit, HDB Financial Services, according to a Bloomberg story that quoted unnamed sources. HDFC Bank plans to sell shares in HDB Financial before the 31st of March of 2020 for as much as 10,000 crore rupees. And the initial public offering of IndiaMart Intermesh Limited, which is an online marketplace for business products and services, was subscribed 36.21 times yesterday, which was the last day of bidding. The IndiaMart IPO, remember, aims to raise 475 crore rupees. ICRA has downgraded the debt instruments issued by Piramal Capital and Housing Finance Limited and Edelweiss Financial Services due to their exposure to the real estate sector. For the details and the ratings rationale, do look up the story on the website. The Securities and Exchange Board of India may tighten its norms on disclosure of pledged shares by promoters of listed firms amid growing number of cases of shares seeing a free fall due to post-default distress sale of such securities by lenders. More than a year after the Reserve Bank of India asked all payment system operators to store transaction data only in India, the regulator has issued clarifications on some aspects of his rules. The clarifications allow payment companies to process transactions overseas, but say that the data must eventually be stored in India. A consortium of Reliance Infrastructure and Italy's Astaldi SPA has received permission to start work on the Bandra-Versova Sea Link in Mumbai, which is the second leg of a 20-kilometer coastal road from Malabar Hill in South Bombay to Versova in the north. In international news, a day after the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell asserted his independence from the White House, President Trump has responded by suggesting that nobody had heard of Powell until he had been chosen by Trump to run the Fed. The president also said that he'd prefer ECB Chair Mario Draghi at the helm of the Federal Reserve. What he said exactly was, quote, "We should have Draghi instead of our Fed person," unquote. That's according to a New York Times report. Speaking of Donald Trump, and this has a ring of familiarity to it, he has threatened to impose substantial additional tariffs on China if there's no progress on a trade deal after his planned meeting with Xi Jinping at the G20 summit in Japan this week. In other international news, Iran has rejected talks with Washington after the latest round of US sanctions. Foreign Minister Mohammad Zarif has said that plans to sanction him demonstrate that the White House's claims of wanting to negotiate with the Islamic Republic are a lie. Iran is set to breach the 2015 nuclear deal that the US walked away from for the first time today, which could strain European ties as well. Now, thousands of peaceful protesters rallied in Hong Kong ahead of the G20 summit seeking democracy and the full withdrawal of a proposed extradition law. Some demonstrations later moved on to blockade police headquarters for the second time in a week. In international news, US stocks ended mixed, with the Dow and the S&P 500 ending flat to marginally lower respectively, and the Nasdaq climbing 0.3%. Asian stocks are mostly positive, with two of the three early risers starting trade in the green. The Nikkei in Japan was higher by over 0.4% last I checked. It's now over to Agam Vakil for the trade setup for the day in India. Morning, Agam. How's it looking?
Good morning, Alex, and good morning, listeners. First things first. Well, global markets are, trending in the green for now, but that really hasn't had too much of an impact on the SGX Nifty futures, which are trading with no gains or losses. Largely flattish, which means that we are likely to see a subdued start to trade in Indian markets too. But let's get on to stocks which are in the news today, starting off with Mindtree. We understand, as PTI sources indicate, that CEO Rostov Ravanan is likely to resign in the coming few weeks. We also have updates from Bharti Airtel. Well, Airtel Africa will issue shares at 80 pence per share, and the books oversubscribed on the full deal size. Moving on to Welspun India, it's entered into a JV with Germany's Sense Organics and has acquired 51% stake in its Myanmar arm. In the primary markets, IPO India Mart Intermesh has been subscribed over 36 times on the final day, which means it is likely to see scarcity in availability and allocation. Moving on to Aster DM Healthcare, True North Fund has bought 7.4% stake at 120 rupees each. And as far as the buyers are concerned, it's Ontario Pension, HDFC Mutual Fund, Fidelity, Steinberg India, Tata AIA Life Insurance. We also have a brokerage note from Macquarie on Chola Finance, where they say it is one of their top picks in the NBFC space with a target of 300. They have stellar asset quality, and it is due to superior collections in infrastructure. And finally, those who are interested in the futures and options space, 34 stocks will move out of the F&O segment from the July series. Some of these stocks include prominent names like Jet Airways, Jen Irrigation, Suzlon, and Reliance Power. The stocks did not meet the enhanced eligibility criteria by the National Stock Exchange, and that's the reason why some of these stocks move out of the segment. Now, these are just some of the names you can keep an eye on as we move into trade today, but don't forget to go through our morning edition of All You Need to Know on BloombergQuint.com.
Thanks, Agam, and thank you all for listening in. This is Alex Matthews signing off. Have a fantastic day.
I hope you enjoyed listening to All You Need to Know. Did you know that you could listen to the show on the IVM Podcast app? On the IVM Podcast app, along with this, we have a number of other shows which you think you'll enjoy. Listen to Cyrus Says with Cyrus Brocha as the host. Listen to Paisa Vaisa with Anupam Gupta. The Scene and the Unseen with Amit Verma, or Shunya One hosted by Shiladitya Mukhopadhyay and myself. Check out the IVM Podcast app to get more talk content that you will enjoy.